Morning. Nice day for a review, ain't it?
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Baelin's Route, but more specifically why Baelin's Route is the best story that I've encountered in 2021. The fact is, this story is so clever and so well written in the way that it follows both the hero's journey and the structure that most great stories are written in. And if you're unfamiliar with both of those or either of those, don't worry, because in this discussion I will be explaining those points and explaining which parts of this movie line up with that. If you haven't seen it yet, or you might be unaware, Baelin's Route is a short movie created by the team over at Vivaladirtleague. They are a group of guys from New Zealand that do a lot of comedic sketches about video gaming or about working in retail, which is something that a lot of people can relate to. They're honestly really clever, they're really funny, and they do a really good job. If you've never heard of them yet, definitely go and check them out. I'm going to link the Baelin's Route down below in the description, so watch that. It's a great movie, and then go down the rabbit hole. Watch all their epic NPC mans. Now, I've been subscribed and watching these guys' channel for a very long time, for years. And it's been so great to watch them go from having such low production values and just being like a regular YouTube channel to becoming what they are today. It's been such a great journey to watch and slowly see their costumes get better, their props get better, their visual effects get better, their locations get better, until it finally culminated into this movie. So like I said, in today's video we are going to be discussing Baelin's Route, and we're going to be talking about why it is such a great story. This is going to be a spoiler discussion because I want to really get into the nitty-gritty as to what makes this story so great. So this is it, you are warned, this is spoilers from here on out. If you haven't seen it, go watch it first, then come back and watch the rest of this video, or watch the rest of this video and then go and watch it, keeping in mind all of the points that I've pointed out. Whatever works best for you. Okay, this is it, last chance for spoilers, here we go. So Baelin's Route follows the reoccurring fisherman NPC character, Baelin, as he follows his program path that he walks every single day and uses the same 7 words of dialogue. Morning, nice day for fishing, ain't it? The story begins in the reoccurring town of Honeywood, and you get to see familiar faces like Greg the Garlic Farmer, Bodger the Blacksmith, and High Sorcerer Barradoon. And from the very start of this movie, this story does 2 things very well. Firstly, it expands on the groundwork that has already been laid by Epic NPC Man and all of their other skits that they've been doing for years. And I believe it was Brandon Sanderson that said something along the lines of, if you want to add new things to your story, whether it be magic or character dynamics or relationships or whatever, don't just randomly add things to it. Take what you already have, take what you've already built, and then expand on it and add in those other things in an organic fashion. And that's exactly what they did in this story. They took a world that they'd been building for so long, and instead of adding some random new things in for the sake of telling a new story, they took what they already had and they expanded it by giving Baelin agency over his own character. And that leads me into the second thing they did so well. They did great foreshadowing and they did great setup for Baelin's character arc, which feels insane to say that a man that only says 7 words and 1 sound can not only have a character arc, but can have a great character arc. It begins with him absent-mindedly fishing while there is a battle raging on behind him. But he doesn't even seem to notice because he's programmed not to notice these things. And he's programmed not to interact with these fights. You can also see this when he doesn't interact with the person being robbed in Honeywood, when he barges through the middle of the 2 people standing in the road because he is programmed to follow his route no matter what. And all of this is important to his character later on. These guys here do such a great job of foreshadowing something that happens a little later on.
That was a crazy in-game event. Watching the whole city get destroyed.
It's such a cool thing for the game devs to do.
Oh, totally. I wonder how this will affect the game.
I'm so keen to try out some of these new quests.
And I love foreshadowing, so I'm all for that. This movie also does a very great job of setting the scene from the very beginning. So if you've never seen any of their other skits, you might not get all their little inside jokes, but there's enough information at the very beginning of this movie that you could watch it without being lost. You could put 2 and 2 together and figure out that this is set in a gaming world, and that Baelin is an NPC, because the 2 people that you just watched die are now ghosts heading back to their bodies. But most importantly, one of them says the line, "Bloody useless NPCs." That establishes that now we know for sure that Baelin is an NPC, and we know that the player characters do not like NPCs. This is important later on. It also sets the tone for this movie as being very tongue-in-cheek. You can expect to not take it too seriously and expect a few laughs. So as far as introductions to a story, it hits all the marks. It builds the world, it sets the tone, it sets up the foreshadowing, and most importantly, it sets up Baelin's character arc. So that's the introduction. Every good story has an introduction, and immediately after the introduction comes the inciting incident. This is what happens in your main character's life that deviates them from their path of normality or whatever they do every single day. The inciting incident is what deviates them from their path and sets them on the path of adventure. It is that first step. That is the inciting incident. And in the show, it is this moment. Now, if Bob, although I know in this his name is not Bob, but to me he will always be Bartholomew Osiris Bladesong, the man that can only roll ones. If Bob hadn't recruited him for this fight, Baelin would have stayed on his path and just kept going about his life like he always does. This is the inciting incident. Now, this is such a great moment to show where the character starts. He's clearly distressed at the idea of combat. It's something that his character was not programmed with. And to really cement that, he doesn't have any weapons. It's just not who he is. And honestly, the actor does such a good job throughout this movie of communicating through his tone, even though he can only say the same 7 words, and his body language. This next scene is further cementing the idea of the inciting incident. Bob pushes Baelin off of the road, and Baelin reluctantly goes because he has been recruited, but looks back at the comfort of his path, his home, the route that he walks every single day, and the thing that he's been programmed to do. Now, after this moment, he goes with Bob and they discover the princess who's in a cage. They collect her, and then Bob starts his new quest, delivering the princess. And they head back to the path. Now, when they get back onto the path, this is another great moment for Baelin's character. It shows the relief. It shows him sighing happily with relief to be back on the path, to be back on his home, his programmed route that he doesn't want to deviate from. One of the really great things about this movie is the way that they handle the wise old wizard or the stereotypical mentor character. The odd thing about this show is that the mentor character is Bob, which is really unconventional, but it's handled in such an extraordinary way because he arrives, he has all of the answers and information to provide exposition to the audience. He then sets the plot in motion and then finally disappears, which is what all great mentor characters do in storytelling. Think, for the obvious example, Gandalf. He has all the information, he gets the quest started, and then he disappears. But I think a better example of the uncommon mentor character is Tess from The Last of Us. You play the game as Joel, who is arguably the boss of the group, but Tess is the one that provides all of the exposition. Tess is the one that gets the plot moving, and then finally ends up disappearing, so that way Joel and Ellie have to complete the quest on their own. And that is what Bob is, the unconventional mentor character. Now, I want you to pay attention to this line right here.
I haven't met many adventurers, but those I have were good, kind-hearted souls, eager to help.
This line is about Baelin's character arc. He goes from not helping people because he isn't programmed to help people, to helping people because he goes on the hero's journey and becomes the hero himself. And more to that, in a standard hero's journey, the princess is what would be considered the helper. She is the catalyst to help him change and become the hero. This is when the foreshadowing comes back from earlier, when those guys were talking when they were walking past Baelin. Bob wasn't expecting the change, but those other guys knew that there would be a change because of that event. Boom. This is the moment called crossing the threshold. This is the moment they leave their fear behind, they leave their expectations behind, they leave their old life behind to step up and become the hero that they are. And they take their first steps towards that goal. This is also the moment where the death of the mentor happens. When the mentor disappears, when Bob dies, so that way the others can go and finish the quest without him. And in the exact same scene, next comes the 2 steps forward, 1 step back moment. The heroes stepped too far out of their comfort zone to save the day. And now they need to retreat into what they know. But unfortunately, once that bullet's fired, you cannot put it back in the gun. So as he's there and he's, I'm not a hero, I'm just a fisherman, time to escape, he can't run from his destiny. A good example of this in recent media is Alina Starkov from the Shadow and Bone series. She uses her power, finds out that she's Grisha, but then doesn't want it. She's like, no, thank you, let someone else do it. I just want to be a normal person. Let someone else play hero. And in the very next scene comes the call to action, which the hero is obligated to reject the first time, and tries to convince whoever is asking them to be a hero that they are not any hero and that they need to go and find someone else. In this next scene here, this is the moment that the stakes are raised. This is the raising the stakes scene. Because before, the princess was just some girl that needed to find her parents. But now she is a girl that is actively being hunted by orcs, and if they catch her, she's going to suffer a gruesome death. They then almost see the girl, and this is when Baelin answers the call to action. He saves the girl with her fishing rod, and then they escape into the forest. Next comes the rising action. So this is when all of the plot stuff is out of the way. You've got your introduction, you've got your inciting incident, you've now pretended like you didn't want to be the hero, you've now accepted that you're going to be the hero, and you're now going on the quest. Now comes the rising action. This is when things start to get intense, this is when things start to get interesting. And in this story, it is this fight scene with the orcs. But not only does this work to raise the action, it also helps to build the bond between the princess and Baelin. They go through this ordeal together, and the princess jumps on the orc's back and starts attacking him. It's a lot like in The Last of Us, when at the beginning, Ellie just kind of hides whenever there's combat. But then later on, Ellie starts throwing bricks and bottles at people once you've built that bond with her. This is also the hero's lowest moment. This is the moment when all the chips are down, everything looks their worst, and the hero has to step up. This is the moment where you think he's going to fail. But then, essentially, this is his Super Saiyan moment. This is the moment where Captain America picks up Thor's hammer. This is the moment at the end of Avatar when Firelord Ozai is throwing fire at Aang and he's hiding in a rock, and then another rock activates Super Avatar mode and he saves the day. And of course, then badassery follows. Now this right here is such a great line, and the writers should be so proud of themselves. This is when they're talking about their common ground and they start speaking about their programming, but they don't really understand it.
You walk the same road every day. Do you ever travel anywhere else?
Morning. Nice day for fishing, ain't it?
You can't.
Morning.
I know how you feel. When I lived in Wraith, I dreamed of leaving the city walls. But something kept me there, locked in place. Like you and your path.
Nice day for fishing, ain't it?
Now that I'm outside, I want nothing more than to return to those walls.
They then keep moving, and the princess gives us this wonderful line of foreshadowing.
Are you secretly an orc pretending to be a human?
And we finally come to the false resolution. This is the fake out ending. This is the moment where they say their goodbyes, and then they head their separate ways. This is also the reveal where you find out that she is actually a princess, and that's that. So they go their separate ways, and then Baelin realizes that something is wrong, and we get the second reveal, which is that the foreshadowing has come back. This human is actually an orc in disguise. Baelin then has his hero entrance, and we get the final boss battle. The final boss battle happens, and it's good, and then they have the resolution. Baelin drops off the princess to her parents, they thank him, and everything is great. And then we get the final part of the hero's journey, which is returning home a changed man. And this is where we see how much he's really changed, because as he's walking through Honeywood, he attacks the thief. He saves the guy. Instead of walking directly between the two people, he deviates from his path. And most importantly, he has the respect of Greg the garlic farmer. And then the story ends with him looking at a beautiful view over Honeywood after deviating from his path. This story really was fantastic. It was a great character arc for Baelin to go from never deviating from his NPC path to choosing his own path and becoming the hero in this world of NPCs. And I honestly hope that these guys get picked up by like Netflix, or at the very least the YouTube original stuff, because they really, really deserve it. These guys have been producing great content for years, and although I don't know them, I feel such a sense of pride and satisfaction for them to see how far they've come from their humble beginnings to this absolute masterpiece of storytelling. And that's going to be it for me today. So please like this video, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you go and check these guys out. And as always, thank you very much.